Let me just set this up. Itong samurai natin. Okay.
One man army.
Yeah, I know. It's literally independent journalism. Ilocano,
Oo.
independent Ilocano journalism. All right. Welcome back everyone dito sa latest episode ng Deep Dive. Easily number one most bashed podcast. Balita ko kahapon sa kabilang channel, may mga nagwa-blind item yata sa atin. Basta was may nag-clarify. Hindi naman ikaw yung ibang tinitamaan doon sa mga masikip daw na shirt, mga ganun. In fairness, idol ko naman yung guest natin today. Puro kami mga slim mode ngayon. At speaking of blind item, of course, obviously yung mga pasaway namin, conversation, double R, W, mga ganun. Marami rin kami mga blind items sa mga kaibigan natin na mga progressives. So today, I said, we have to make sure we have, again, one of our other good progressive friends with us, aside from Congresswoman Franz Castro, a regular guest here. Welcome back to our little show, former Congressman Teddy Casino. Thank you so much, Teddy, for joining us.
Of course, anytime, Richard. Thank you. At magandang gabi sa lahat.
Magandang gabi. Of course, Teddy, you and I have been going back and forth on Twitter back in the day, but you know, those were the days. Now, let's get serious kasi elections na. Of course, shortly I want to talk about yung ano yung mga plan mo sa election na yan, ano yung mga diskarte na ginagawa mo, meron ba kayong mga tactical changes, messaging. Nakita ko may mga bomber jacket picture ka rin, kaya ginaya rin kita, yung mga, diba? Yung mga Gen Z moves, diba? Pag-usapan natin lahat yan. But before that, obviously, we have to clear the air on a couple of very...
Ikaw nga ginagaya ko eh.
I know you're gonna say that. I know you're gonna say. Flamboyant, as Sensei Walden would say, flamboyant. No, but on a serious note, obviously, you know, despite all of the kind of pluralism of, I mean, obviously, marami tayong mga points of view hindi necessarily tumutugma, but I think that's part of the pluralism of including progressives in the country. I know you asked me the other night, Richard, progressive ka pala. Parang sabi, bakit ikaw progressive? We don't want to go down that road, but later we'll go down that road. No, but obviously, nung last month, nagkaroon ng tatlong rally, di ba? So, napuntahan ko yung dalawa. Unfortunately, hindi ko naubutan yung sa Liwasan Bonifacio, yung sa inyo. But I was able to get yung mga updates via accounts ni Ma'am Franz Castro, among others. And you saw also, I posted about it. And I said, parang interestingly, ang laki nung overlap nung morning Akbayan and Magdalawan, and then yung sa inyo, in terms of at least making the issue of Sara impeachment very central. And one thing I noticed, Teddy, was dun sa isa, parang medyo all over the place, which we have nothing against. This is a democracy, we're pluralistic among others. Okay lang naman yan. But for me, medyo nagiging nakakabahala na siya because parang na-notice ko, and this is not targeted at any specific candidates. Speaking of blind item, I'm not just saying Bam Aquino. What I was disappointed was how people were trying to defend hindi naman defend, kasi I think Bam Aquino's statement had a broader context. Pero yung mga tao, they were trying to say, hindi, okay lang not to have a clear stance on the issue of Sara impeachment. Kasi you know, baka may mga DDS na pwede bumoto sa'yo, sayang naman, ganun. Yun yung hindi ko na-appreciate, Teddy. So, I want to be fair. We'll have Bam Aquino later on to explain his side, so I don't want to be unfair to him. What I felt was dispiriting was yung ganyan logic na, para sa man lahat corrupt, BBM, team kadiliman, team kasamaan, okay lang na mag-strategic ambiguity ka. And I think one area all of us can agree with is, ano pang ambiguity yung kailangan natin on this Sara impeachment issue? How many hearings do we need? So, former Congressman Teddy, can you tell me a little bit about where you guys are coming from on the Sara impeachment issue?
Well, we're coming from the fact that we are complainants of the second impeachment complaint. So we really feel, particularly on the issue of the confidential and intelligence funds, na talagang it's a cut and dried case.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't get any clearer than that. During the hearings of the Committee on Good Government in Congress, obvious naman na talagang una, they used it for the wrong purpose because there are very strict parameters for the use of confidential funds. At ginamit na ito sa mga gamot, sa mga groceries, sa mga transportation expenses na walang kinalaman, even office rentals, walang kinalaman sa intelligence or security functions if there is any of the DepEd and the Office of the Vice President. secondly, not only that, hindi lang mali yung paraan ng ginawa, mali rin yung reporting.
Yeah.
Kasi, yun na nga, lumabas itong mga piatos, and then it was her security officers who were, deciding on matters na hindi naman dapat. And last, tinago ko niya, pinagtakpan niya. And when Congress was investigating whether it is the Committee on the Appropriations or the Good Government or whatever committee Congress did, ayaw niyang sumipot at ayaw nilang ipaliwanag. So on that issue
Yeah.
alone of the confidential intelligence funds, I really feel that she has to be impeached, and sa linaw ng ebidensya, Senate has nowhere to go but to convict. But of course, there will still be a trial, and in the
Yeah.
trial, I don't know, baka may mga lumabas naman mga bagay na hindi natin
Right.
alam, but
Exactly.
sa nalalaman natin, as far as the records is concerned, as far as the evidences were unearthed during the congressional deliberations, it's a cut and dried case. Ngayon, yung ibang issues, marami pa eh. I think there were 7 articles of impeachment. May kanya-kanyang proponents din yan, pero I think malinaw naman that she made death threats against the President, the First Lady, and the Speaker of the House. So, kitang-kita naman yun sa kanyang ginawang video. With respect to the non-disclosure of the salins, I think that's also records lang naman pag-uusapan dyan.
Yeah.
And and previous statements and actions of the Vice President.
Right.
So para sa akin, malinaw. So, and I think it's a disservice to say na issue lang ng politiko ito, and that hindi issue ng ating mamamayan, because marami sa ating mamamayan ang naghihintay ng ano magiging aksyon ng Senado dito.
Congressman Teddy, I want to go back to this because again, I'm trying to be fair here, in a sense that paano yung argument na pag kayo ang nanalo, you're running for Senate, we'll discuss it later on, Bam is running for Senate, you're going to be senator judges. So, isn't it parang judicious for you, right, to not take a very clear-cut stance on something that you'll have to still assess at a different level? Of course, there'll be prosecution team from the Congress, there'll be a defense team from the other side. I don't know kung si Digong, Panelo, or babalik ba si Harry Roque. He might be back in time, right? How do you work around that? Well, at the same time, you have senators, incumbent senators like Robin Hood Padilla and Amy Marcos. A re-election is one. Another one is going to stick around until 2020, who are saying they're going to fight this essentially tooth and nail. So, do you think we should still have a pretension to procedural impartiality at this point in time? So again, gusto ko lang patulan yung argument na yan because, it's an argument that is being raised by some friends, and I think some friends have good intentions. But I think we have to interrogate and scrutinize that argument, right? Mapa-off na lang yung internet natin. Oh, sorry. Oops, Congressman, I think
When they
naghangka.
sit as judges, pwede nilang sabihin, hihintayin nila. But I think at this point, particularly yung mga issues na lumabas na, it's important for them to already disclose what they think really happened, at kung meron pa nananagutan si Vice President Duterte at this point. Of course, without saying that the trial will can possibly influence their decision. Pero at this point kasi, ilang buwan nang pinag-usapan ito, obligado na meron ka ng posisyon or at least an initial conclusion.
Well, obviously, you as being a progressive fighting dun sa mga concern ng ating mga kababayan, especially in terms of yung mga gut issues, how do you think should we approach this issue to make sure na hindi, I mean, of course, mahalaga yung sa impeachment issue, pero mahalaga din obviously yung issue ng inflation, yung bigas na 20 pesos kada kilo na hindi pa nangyari. Do you think you can harmonize all of these issues na while discussing these high-level accountability issues, also discuss yung gut issues? I mean, I'm already answering the question, right? But I want to get, of course, my sense is, how are you
Well,
approaching that? Yun nga
konektado
eh.
naman yan eh.
Yun nga eh. Yeah, yeah.
The reason why we have so much problems as far as the economy is concerned, also because of governance and also because of corruption and lack of
Right.
accountability. So there is that very clear relationship. Ngayon, yung usapin lang ng ang komplikado kasi ngayon the election, no? And I think some of the senators are also trying to get votes from the pro Duterte camp. And that is probably the reason kung bakit ayaw nilang sabihin kung ano yung tingin nila. So it is electoral, ano yan. Probably they think it is wise strategy.
Just to be clear, this involves members of the admin slate, right? Like pangalan niya, yung dating Ronald Llamas ni Digong, si Tolentino, right? Like, it's like, wait, admin ka ba? And then, pagdating sa forthwith argument, ang dami niya mga sinasabi na klarong-klaro naman yung ating saligang batas. So, just to be clear, we're not like talking about a single candidate or so. There are even members of the admin slate who are ambiguous on this issue. The president, what do you think about Jesus Escudero? Hindi ko na pagtawanan yung microblading niya. Ang dami na nagalit sa akin. Richard, tama na eh, microblading ka na. Like, what do you think about Jesus Escudero stance? Sorry, recess na eh. Wala nang time eh. Si you, June, what do you think about that? Do you think that's a dereliction of duty on the part of the Senate President?
I think ang problema ni Senator Cheese Escudero ayaw ng mga senador na itackle yung impeachment. It's not just cheese.
Right.
I think practically all the senators want to act on this after the elections. And as Senate President,
Ipit din
kahit
yun,
gustuhin man niya,
ipit yung kamay.
kung ayaw ng mga members niya, mahihirapan siya eh. So I think there's that complication. So it's not just Cheese Escudero's decision to make.
Well, absolutely.
And knowing how the senators are thinking, especially the re-electionists, baka mas gusto nilang after the elections na talaga ito pag-usapan.
I
Which
understand.
is unfortunate, of
Yeah.
course. Unfortunate, of course. But that is what is happening now in the Senate.
But do you think we should put pressure on Jesus Escudero to at least get the ball rolling? Because one argument is, if you
I think he will. I think he will get the ball rolling. But for the Senate to form themselves into an impeachment court, he will need the majority of the Senate to cooperate.
Yeah.
Kung wala, mahihirapan talaga siya as Senate President.
Kasi ang point ko is at least yung basic procedures, rules of the game. Kasi, impeachments are not your normal trial courts, di ba? So, pag kailangan pag-usapan yan. So, if you start, sabi pa nga ng iba, after SONA pa, di ba? There's 6 months. And
Sobrang tagal.
tagal na yan, di ba? And by that time, of course, you have bought enough time for a certain camp, right? For them to, who knows? Baka iba na yung narratives, hindi na Piatos Grace, baka Oishi na, di ba? So, which brings me to speaking of, bakit purong Piatos at Mary Grace pinag-usapan natin? What about this argument? And again, some of our friends are raising this. And when I say friends, not necessarily left or center, it could be liberals, right? Essentially, argument nila, not only argument, naalala ko dun sa EDSA shrine, naglagay sila ng malaking tarpaulin temporarily, tinanggal yata eh. Ang laki ng picture hindi ako nagbabody shame ang laki ng picture ni Martin Romualdez sa gitna. And then like Sarah was just on the side and one of the speakers, one of our good friends, yung essentially yung is clarion call niya is kasalanan mo to Marcos, ganon. So what do you think about this argument na openly Sarah said, 'di ba? Something like million lang naman pinag-usapan dito kabila nga billion eh. Like what about yung whataboutism argument na yan? And yung idea na this is the worst budget ever, yung mga ganun argument. Teddy, what do you think about that line of argument? Do you think it's helpful? Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it's something we have to work on? What do you think about that?
Well, I don't know if this is the worst budget ever. Soundbite yan, no? But alam mo, every budget, talaga namang andyan ng pork barrel. That never disappeared. Even during the time of Noynoy Aquino.
Right.
Even right after the million people march.
Yeah.
Tinago lang nila yan eh. Nasa DPWH yan.
You were
And the
there, di ba?
practice of the
You
vice...
were serving in
and
the Congress back in. Can you tell from your own experience, Teddy? You were serving in the Congress back in the day.
oh yeah,
Di
yung
ba
bicameral
questionable? Yeah,
conference committee.
can you remind people, refresh their minds? Kasi maraming kaibigan natin nagsalita as if walang pork barrel, including time nung kanilang mga idolo na presidente. Maybe you wanna refresh
No,
their memory.
the pork barrel was never gone. You
Yeah.
know, of course, yung time ni Pinoy na ipanalo natin sa Supreme Court to declare the PDAF and the DAP as unconstitutional.
Right.
Pero ang ginawa lang naman nila dyan, tinago nila sa line item ng DPWH.
Right.
At saka tinago yan sa budgets ng DSWD, ng DOH. So it was always there. In fact, it increased during the time of President Aquino. Eh, ganyan naman eh. Every year, nag-i-increase yan eh. Kasi, inflation.
Tsaka kahit pa paano yung mayaman naman ng Pilipinas, ibig sabihin yung mga mayaman natin, I mean, our GDP is getting bigger
Yeah.
every year too.
Ngayon,
Yeah,
medyo garapal ngayon because itong AKAP, talagang may... garapal talaga. Yung ayuda politics ngayon has become so institutionalized and so accepted. So in that sense, medyo ibang medyo garapal. And I think that totoo din naman yan. Ngayon, does that reduce
Yun nga.
the accountability of Sara Duterte? Of course not. Does that mean na hindi na natin i-hold to account si Sara Duterte dahil ganon din naman si Martin at ganon din naman si Marcos? No. Every chance that we get that we can hold any of these high officials accountable, we grab it. Nangyayari ngayon, nag-away ang unit team at lumabas yung mga issue kay Sara, yung ebidensya, di habulin natin siya. And then pag lumabas naman yung mga ebidensya laban kay Martin or kay Marcos, then that's the time that we also go after them. But to say na awag na muna itong isa kasi lahat naman sila sangkot, walang mangyayari sa atin yan.
Exactly.
The accountability mechanisms will be useless because the argument will always be, lahat naman kami dito nagnanakaw, bakit ako lang? In fact, yan ang ginagamit ni Sara Duterte. Kasi ako, 125 million lang naman. Yung iba mas malaki. But, ang tanong dyan, okay, so ipaliwanag mo pa rin yung 125 million mo. And if napatunayan that you really used it in the wrong way, then you should be held accountable. Yung barangay captain nga, 30,000, nakukulong eh.
Yeah, I mean, kukuha ka ng 10,000 lang ng check for some honorarium. My goodness, ang dami mong paperworks na pupunuin. For like anyone who has done, any humble work with government, ang dami mga paperworks na nakaka-stress me. So like, I have to hire an EA just to do the paperworks and all. You know what I'm saying, right?
In fact, it should not matter whether you are pro Duterte or pro Marcos. The fact is, pera mo yan. Pera natin yung tinakaw eh. Kung ikaw ba ay pro Duterte, sabi mo, hindi ko naman pera yan. Pera ng mga pro Marcos yan. Of course not. It's everyone's money. Kaba ng bayan yan. So whether a Marcos stole it or a Duterte stole it, o keseho dun sino nagnakaw, dapat panagutin yon. And so this is actually one of the issues that both the pro Marcos and pro Duterte should unite because it's our money. It's everyone's money. Kaya lang, nahaluan talaga ng politika at yun ang problema dito.
Okay, so now I think we're getting into an interesting set of discussions. Una-una, of course, wag natin kalimutan na pagdating sa mga confidential funds ng mga Duterte, bilyones ang pinag-usapan throughout the years, no? So, pag longitudinal ang approach mo...
From Davao all the way to Malacanang.
Exactly. So, maybe you want to refresh memory of everyone na hindi lang Digong's time, Davao's time, Digong's time as mayor. So, kung bilyones din ang usapan, we can talk about billions, diba? Nagkataon lang itong 100 million plus na yan. Medyo talagang medyo malakas yung preponderance of evidence, if I could put it that way, for us to at least get the impeachment process going. So, I think that's one line na hindi na-emphasize masyado. Parating kong sinasabi, if you wanna go down that road, sige, gusto natin pag-usapan ng bilyones ng Davao Confidential Fund, Digong's Farmali, So, but the other one here, Teddy, I wanna ask you is, ang problema kasi dito napansin ko is, of course, okay naman lahat tayo mag-argue or magdedebate. Ang problema kasi is, nakalatag na yung yung troll farms eh. Nakalatag na yung propaganda machine eh. Which is ready to pounce on anything to distract. 'Di ba? Yung pusit, yung sinasabi ng pusit games, 'di ba? Para sa akin kasi yung GA issue na yan, while valid yung scrutiny niyan, talagang ginus out ng mga Dutertes at ang kanilang propaganda machine to distract. Kasi, di ba, Teddy, momentum din ang issue dito eh. Why would that certain group have a 1 million peace rally, whatever? We know what was going on there, right? This is about momentum. This is about political will. This is about intimidation, if you can put it that way. So, tinitingnan ko rin yung political context na yan. Eh. What is your take on that, Teddy?
Well, we will expect the Dutertes to try to do everything na madistract ang taong bayan dun sa issues kay Sara Duterte at saka yung ICC investigations and other investigations kay Rodrigo Duterte. So that's par for the course. Ang problema, ito namang grupo nila Bongbong, I mean, they open themselves up. Eh kung hindi ginawa yan sa AKAP, kung hindi ginawa ng BICAM yan, edi walang pambala yung kabila. And I think this just shows really how rotten both camps are. Kasi talagang may maibabato sila sa isa't isa. And I think ang lesson dyan para sa taong bayan, hindi that Duterte is better than Marcos or the Marcoses are better than Duterte. It's that we have to find an alternative to these two most powerful political dynasties. I think that should be the mindset. Hindi yung magkakampihan tayo. And yun ang narrative ng Marcos at Duterte. Mas madumi sa amin yon, mas malinis kami sa kanila. And I think it's time for people to realize these are two sides of the same traditional political...
I mean, it was a unit team for a reason, right? I mean,
actually, administrasyon naman pareho yan eh. Nag-faction lang sila.
right.
But they're actually, these are both administration parties. Nag-away-away lang sila. So, yun na nga. Maganda sana kung ang alternative ay nagkakaisa din to challenge these two, these two political dynasties. Pero, yun
but
nga,
we'll discuss that.
Yun naman yung isang problema.
Yeah. Terry, I want to discuss that.
General.
Yeah. I want to discuss yung opposition, Pink 2.0, grand opposition. Mahalaga yan because I think that I want that to be a core discussion today because I mean, unang-una, pag tinignan mo yung surveys, no? I mean, the only available survey we have on essentially alignment is the Okta survey. And we'll have Ranjit Rai, Professor Rai with us soon. Of course, anyone is free to attack any survey. But this is the best. It's not a proxy survey. It's a direct survey. Ang tanong, are you with admin? Are you with Duterte? Are you with whatever? So around 38% with BBM, according to survey. Only 15% with the DS camp. Only 7% with the liberals, basically. Teddy, 40% are up for grabs. That means the biggest chunk, right, of yung mga sub-demographics na yan ay mga tao na they don't believe in any of the groups, right? And they want to be convinced. They want to be inspired, right? Kaya nga sinasabi ko, kung gusto mong manalo or at least you want to have a good race, inspire mo yung mga 40% na yan para magkaroon ng paki sa politika. Because you never know. You might get a few percentage here and there and become suddenly competitive. So, yun ang gusto kong balikan. Kaya sabi ko, hindi pwedeng mga pa-cute and pa-safe and ganon. That's why 40% have switched off. That's why 40% are not with any side, right? That's why 7% lang with the traditional opposition, alam natin, di ba? So, kaya nga sabi ko, this is a time for conviction politics, for decisive messaging, di ba? Dapat klarong-klaro tayo dyan.
Yeah. Because I think yung 40% na yan, they might not be siding with any of the established political camps.
Right.
Pero alam nila kung ano yung tama.
Exactly.
Alam nila na ang opisyal na nagkamali, kailangan managot. Alam nilang may proseso. Alam nilang impeachment is a process of accountability. So the challenge for someone who is challenging these two camps is to clarify that issue and to say, accountable si Sara, accountable din si Marcos. Kaya lang sila nagtatakipan.
Yeah.
Or they're just yung sarili nilang, of course, they're protecting themselves. At ito ay awayan lang ng mga political dynasties. But that is the challenge for the alternative or the true opposition.
Again, today I spoke about being fair, no? So obviously you have watched. I mean, first of all, I'm very Gramsci on this in a sense that if you have two enemies, you don't fight the two front war at the same time. You choose war of maneuver for one, war of position for the other, right? And I think you can see which one I believe is the war of maneuver. Like you have to go, and then which one is the war of position, right? So I'm very Gramscian in terms of my perspective, kasi wala naman tayong problema in terms of convictions and vision. Eh. Ang issue lang dito tactics, 'di ba? And yung alignments and political realities. Kasi we're adults here. Hindi tayo mga bata na nang sloganeering lang. I know you get annoyed every time I use that term of sloganeering because I think we really have to have also legitimate tactical discussion. Dapat ganun na yung level of discussion because I think our audience deserve that. Dapat gets nila na we are serious people. Hindi lang tayo nagpapakute tayo dito or nagmamalinis tayo dito or nagtibak-tibakan tayo, diba? We're serious people here. So going back to this, Terry, so I have essentially two layers to this third force you're talking about, the alternative force. Kasi we want this 40% to go for the good side, plus the 7%, and maybe some of the solid north, if I can put it that way. Kasi ang dami ko nakikita ng mga comments na they say, ano ako, solid north ako, BBM ako, pero okay ako kay XYZ, and including Franz Castro, for instance, right? Like, if feeling nila you're anti-Duterte enough, they're willing to vote for you. And we know that most people don't want to remember the 12 slate of one admin or one opposition. They're just going to go with a couple of candidates they feel more comfortable with. But I still want to talk about the 40% and the more genuine opposition na gusto nila ng good governance among others. Unang-una, again, just to be fair, Teddy, so probably you listened dun sa discussion namin, two-volume discussion namin ni Walden and Ronald about quote-unquote the failures of the left. And believe me, Teddy, for all my playfulness and sometimes bulliness when I talk, I actually say it from a position of empathy and sympathy because alam ko ang hirap maging progressive sa ating bansa. I mean, Philippines is a center right country, right? I call it the Reagan nation,
Yeah.
the Asian Reagan nation. It's a very center right country. If all surveys I've seen, for instance, the Asia Barometer survey, there was a question about should the state engage in social redistribution. Lahat ng ASEAN countries nandito, 70%, 70%. Philippines lang yung, hindi dapat makialam yung estado sa redistribution. Sobrang libertarian, feudalistic. I mean, this is a republican nation, basically. That's why Trump had more votes in Philippines in terms of popularity than even Filipino Americans. So first of all, gusto kong balikan yung question. Where is the, again, quote-unquote failure? Because I'm sure you'll challenge that. And history is not done, right? There's still tomorrow. There's still another election. But in terms of shortcomings of left, saan sa tingin mo nagkakulang yung among progressives and leftist groups? It's a wide spectrum. In terms of winning and creating, again, sorry to use the Gramscian term, a counter-hegemonic bloc. Sorry for going down that road again. Ano po yung mga tactical mistakes or strategic misalignments? What are the lessons from the past when you ran for Senate before? And how do you think we should correct that and move forward? And I'm saying this as someone who's sympathetic to ideas of a much more egalitarian, progressive society. But I think dapat maging totoo rin tayo, tapat tayo in terms of ano yung mga naging historical problems or mistakes and what are the things we have to do. Or maybe you want to challenge my entire premise, Teddy. Go ahead. I'm more than free to be challenged, yeah.
Well, for one thing, we might be, kumbaga, sinisisi natin lahat sa left. I mean, for the most part, ang dominant naman sa atin yung right. I mean, it was there was a 20-year dictatorship under the Marcos dictatorship. Nahulma niya isang henerasyon ng mga mamamayan na, into what you say is a very conservative right-wing thinking. And
Right.
ang hirap din basta-basta baliktarin ng left yan. And of course, the left had its mistakes. On the record naman yung boycott policy ng 1986, yung
Purges,
yung purges, yung naging hysteria,
and your and your temporary
confusion sa kanilang
and your
tactics and
temporary
strategies.
tactical you had temporary tactical alliances with the Duterte administration. Some would say the other administration. The Akbayan had also with the liberals. So I'm just trying to be fair, diba? But at the same time, parang sinasabi ko naman, if you also don't build coalitions, you're not gonna have any says. Talagang, it's an impossible, difficult situation. So, I'm not apologizing, but at the same time, I'm trying not to be unfair. Do you see where I'm coming from, Teddy? Kaya sabi ko nga, let's just have this honest conversation. Sa tingin mo, ano yung mga lessons na dapat natutunan natin from our past quote-unquote mistakes in retrospect? Obviously, in retrospect.
Mahirap yung tanong mo
Sorry, Teddy, pinapahamak ba kita? But ganito kasi ang problema ko, Teddy, di ba? Ang problema ko is parang lahat tayo may silo-silo di ba? Like, I go to this group, may sarili silang ganun. Tingin nila sila lang tamang left. Then you go to this group, hindi totoong left yan, mga ganun yan. I mean, I'm not gonna throw out the terms, right? And I just feel, my goodness, ba't di tayo nagsama-sama? I mean, we were together the other month and we had guests from Latin America, right? Dr. Long, I had him on my show, so this is on the record. And Dr. Long was talking about how effective the left is in Uruguay, in Chile, in Colombia, mga very similar country to ours. Ex-Spanish colony, feudalistic, very conservative Catholic. So parati ako naisip, dapat ganun, mag-usap-usap tayo. Okay lang magdi-disagree tayo. Alam ng tao, on EDCA, US-China issue, medyo nag-disagree tayo dati. Although ngayon, Trump, ibang usapan na. We can discuss that later on. But at least we have to talk. We have to, I mean, di ba? Kasi lahat naman tayo, ayaw natin ng feudalismo Lahat naman tayo, pagod na pagod tayo sa oligarkiya di ba? Pagod na pagod tayo, maging tuta tayo ng kung anong superpower dyan, di ba? So, that's why I'm having this conversation with you because ako lang makapal ang mukha I'm willing to talk to all sides. You know me, right? So I just wanted to hear from you more in terms of the lessons we have learned. Alam ko mahirap yan. So, sorry, Teddy, I'm putting you on the spot because I want to do this so that I can move forward with the next part of our conversation, which is anong next ngayon sa darating na election na ito and 2028, yeah.
Well, para sa akin, sa ilang discussions that I've had with comrades from the left, ang isang basic yan nakalimutan yung ilang mga basic, sabihin na natin basic principles or strategies, like how do you build your mass base, how do you consolidate your mass base, paano na hindi mo nagagasgas yung mamamayan, and then how do you ensure na ipapanalo yung laban, or hindi lang laban ng laban, meron din silang mga tactical gains. And how do you balance yung magagasgas mo sa dapat may yung mix between the economic benefits na nilalaban nila and the requirements of the political struggles. Mga ganon, yung pagbabalanse basically and well, that has always been the challenge. And then of course, there's yung usapin ng the legal struggle vis-a-vis the armed revolutionary struggle.
Right.
What is the proper balance? And how do you ensure na hindi yung hindi ka mawawasak, no? And that yun, I think these are the things that hindi nagagawa ng tama in the past.
Do you think we were unfair, Teddy? Again, this is we're saying this as friends. Do you think na yung mga katulad namin na Johnny come lately lang, sino tong konyo na to na taga Baguio na nagfi-feeling talking about Gramsci? I'm sure people would say that about me, right? But I hope people understand where I'm coming from because I felt someone has to say these things openly and nagkataon lang makapal ang mukha ako. Do you think we've been unfair to left to ourselves in a sense, right? I mean, you and I are not necessarily the same shade of progressive, but do you think sometimes we're also too hard on ourselves? Kasi ang hirap maging progressive sa Pilipinas talaga. Parang it's easier to be a progressive in US even, I would say, right? It's even, I mean, my goodness, the heartland of capitalism. It's definitely much easier to be a progressive in Japan, in Europe, in Latin America. Even Thailand at some
point. Let me give you a
please.
example.
Yeah, correct me if you think I'm being...
Sa ibang areas, ng mga mass-based talaga ng kaliwa.
Yeah.
No, na organized. For example, yung mga union air workers communities, for example, in Southern Tagalog, na matagal nang may mga union dyan, kumikilos. And I think the left did a lot of good work,
right,
building labor unions,
right,
etc. Pero pag pumasok ang gobyerno dyan at pinatay na yung mga leaders ng union at tinakot ang mga union and naging contractual yung mga manggagawa, ang hirap sabihin na ang nagkamali dyan yung movement eh. That the labor movement failed.
Yeah.
Because the attacks were from all sides, ano? Yung sa workplace, yung relations nila sa yung type ng employment nila from regular employment, puro naging contractual na lahat. And then you have these attacks from the military and the police, even the local governments. Eh kahit siguro anong galing mong organizer doon, eh pag pinatay ka ba,
Yeah.
dadapa at dadapa talaga yung movement. So, eh, in a sense, masasabi mong we might be too hard on ourselves. Nasasabihin natin, kaya bumagsak ang mga union dito dahil hindi na organize
Yeah.
ng maayos eh. O
But,
sasabihin na,
Teddy,
kasi
that's a
mali yung
balance
message,
of power argument,
or
which
mali yung messaging mali yung strategy and tactics ng organizer dito. But the fact is the fascist attacks were simply too much. Kaya bumigay yung union, halimbawa, o yung community organization.
I
So
definitely,
may ganyang aspeto.
definitely the balance of power argument. I agree with you in terms of if you look at the business sector, parts of civil society. Obviously, alam natin yung mga usual suspects. They're very hostile to the left, right? Probably some of them will be pissed off we're even having this conversation at me, but they know me. I'm a Richard is Richard, right? Magulo mag-isip yan. No, but
Another
nevertheless,
example,
yeah, please, sige, sige, sige.
Pag-usapan natin yung labor. Kasi nasa labor ako in the mid-1990s nung nagsimula itong contractualization.
And then trade
Tuloy-tuloy
liberalization, WTO coming
Yes, and
in,
then
yeah,
nahirapan na yung mga union.
right.
Pinag-iisipan ko what are the new forms of organization na kayang gawin ng manggagawa kung puro contractual na sila at nag-outsource na yung mga kumpanya at mga manning agencies na yung napakalaking bahagi ng sistema. Until now, hindi ko pa rin ma-grasp ano yung pinaka-effective na organizing sa ganong context. And I think whether you are a traditional labor leader or a progressive or even a revolutionary labor organizer, mahihirapan ka talaga eh. And it will probably take some time before the movement is able to come up with strategies and tactics that will address that very new situation na hindi na actually new pero hanggang ngayon we're still grappling with how we can revive the labor movement under these conditions of contractualization, globalization, and yung matinding atake sa labor front.
Well, again, to be fair, also speaking of balance of power and material realities and condition, we had, for instance, si Dr. Lero here, who's a Brazil expert, diba? And she was talking about how the difference between Brazil with the PT, Trabador, Parte Trabador, is that Brazil had a strong manufacturing base. So, parang numerically, ang laki nung yung labor union sila. And Lula, who's the current president for the third time, and last time I checked, he's going to run again in 2 years from now.
Right.
He is a labor union background. So, some would say because we're a service-oriented economy and sobrang nagde-industrialize tayo, and this is of course the Walden Bello argument, and we're all students of him on that level. Meron din tayo,
Industrialized
meron tayong political economy argument. But again, I want to go Gramsci on this and ask you about the question of yung tinatawag na yung parang yung folk culture. For instance, why not work more with progressive sections of the church? Why not work with, some of them, I don't know, barangay officials or some sections of the elite na more sympathetic to more, not naman communistic or socialistic ideas, but let's just call it labor-right or social democratic ideals. What about that? In terms of winning over at least some more sympathetic or less hostile sections of the establishment. Because, Gramsci's writings was in Italy, which was the heartland of a very conservative, Catholicism plus, Christian Democrats. And next thing you know, Mussolini was in power, right? Which cost his life. But I think his arguments are very reasonable for global South countries. A lot of Indians read Gramsci to talk about mobilization under conditions of Modi, populism, and BJP. So while I agree with you, the political economy of the Philippines is I won't say singularly, but structurally very disadvantageous to the political left. Feeling ko naman parang we're not necessarily the worst, and probably we can do something. Like for instance, how can we make the left, the progressive ideals more cool? Like in the US, for instance, they have the revival of the whole Bernie Sanders, democratic socialism, Jacobin magazine. Don't you think we should do something like that? Obviously, at the back of my head is all the red tagging that Digong did to all of you, right? But nevertheless, diba?
At
Something has to
saka
be done.
ang left sa US, nagse-self-flagellate din ngayon because
Oh
of the
yeah.
Trump.
Oh yeah.
I mean, of course, may Bernie Sanders ka, pero Trump won at the end. So, namumroblema din sila doon.
But they're putting pressure on the Democratic establishment, right? And a couple of young members of the Progressive Caucus, for instance, right? One of them in Arizona, they're all coming out and speaking out na itong pa-cute Obamaism, whatever you want to call it, it's not gonna work anymore. You need something more radical, more working class oriented, much more sensitive to class condition, hindi masyadong pawok. So, again, I agree with you that lahat naman nahihirapan yung left all around the world, diba? But do you think in terms
Dito
of
nga, ang problema natin, McCarthyism pa rin eh. So, 1950s eh, ang problema.
You're right. Marami tayong mga Roy-Con.
Takot.
Marami tayong mga Roy-Cons in the Philippines. Yeah, yung mga lawyers are more than willing to red tag everyone else. Including mga lawyers na dati, akala natin progressive. Walang relation. This is completely unrelated to our discussion. Any news about Harry Roque? What is your read of the curious case of Harry Roque? Someone who used to be a human rights lawyer, nakikisali sa mga tibak-tibak stuff. Do you think his arc says something also about the difficulties of progressive movement in the Philippines? Right? Because he's like classic middle class, matalino, nag-aral, next thing you know, talon na ako, ito na yung opportunity, di ba? Next thing you know, may pogo pa daw, di ba? Next thing you know, baka Dubai na yan. When in fact, you would have hoped those people are on the good side. Yeah.
How left Harry really was.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Did
was
he opportunistically
human rights.
ride? Did he opportunistically ride the left, right? That's the point, di ba?
Yun na nga eh, yun na nga eh. And hindi naman nawawala yung sympathizers na sinasabi mo. But isang kapansin-pasin ngayon, yung mga sympathizers, they want to keep a low key. Medyo,
Yeah.
I think may impact talaga yung red tagging nung time ni Duterte.
Hanggang ngayon sa tingin mo.
And then
Teddy?
yung anti-terrorism legislation
Yeah.
na, you have some people na kinasuhan ng financing terrorism just for giving money to political detainees. May ano yan eh, may konting, hindi lang konti, meron talagang takot.
Right.
So that's also one problem. Yung chilling effect na impact nung ginawa ni Duterte, the EJ case and the red tagging is
Yeah.
still very much felt.
So that adds a new structural constraint, di ba? So kasama na yung political economy na pinag-usapan natin in terms of balance of power between, essentially proto-fascists and
Yeah.
conservatives. And then what you're saying is
I mean,
nadagdagan pa
imagine, pati si Leni Robredo, ni-red tag. I mean, and she had to explain. So, kung umabot na sa ganon.
Soberano,
talagang-
di ba? Yung mga artista rin, di ba? Si Lisa Soberano, like, oh my goodness.
Everyone.
Dapat,
And in many communities now,
Jollibee rin,
yung
di ba?
mga-
Nilagay sa Matrix si Jollibee.
di ba yung mga college students natin usually pupunta sa communities yan for their exposure, for their studies. Ano yan? Yung mga yan, narerentag yan pag pumunta sa community na makita ng mga sundalo doon, oh, taga-UP ka, taga-university ka, but ano ginagawa mo dito? So, ano yan eh, may malalim na impact yung ganong red scare.
Yeah.
Sa mga
Stigmatization, no? Systematic stigmatization.
communities.
In that sense, Teddy, again, I'm not, I come from Ilocos, so, you don't have to tell me about the Marcoses. But my point is, hindi ba in that sense, the Dutertes are the biggest red taggers in Philippine history? Hindi ba, I mean, just look at how constantly NPA, infiltration, DepEd. I teach in UP, right? I was not happy when na-revoke yung, essentially, yung autonomy namin, di ba? Even as I had relatively good relationship with the military and Secretary Lorenzana and other things. So, I mean, from your point of view, hindi ba greater evil ang Dutertes in that case? I know you shouldn't choose a side, but between
Choppy ka.
sorry, I know we had this argument about not choosing a side, but isn't it arguable that Duterte's indeed are the ultimate threat here?
And you're getting choppy.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, again, going back to this, Ted,
Oh, yeah, that's better.
can't you say na in this sense, I don't want to say lesser evil, but the lesser evil argument is a very demonized argument, but aren't the Dutertes the greater
Nawawala.
evil? Ngayon, narinig mo ako, Teddy. Parang ayaw mo yata sagutin yung
Ayan, yan.
tanong ko. Parang ayaw mo
No, no,
yata
no, no.
sagutin.
Nawawala,
I'm
nawawala.
just kidding.
Again.
Parang ayaw mo yata sagutin yung tanong ko. No, no, no.
Hindi,
My question is that,
because ako nga,
no, I'm just
nawala
kidding.
ako talaga.
No, my point is, if you look at the red tagging, if you look at the EJ case, if you look at the, all of this weaponization of the discourse of anti-oligarchy, I mean, Duterte's tick all the boxes in ways that most of the trapos don't, right? Like, they're levels, right? They're levels. So, that's why I'm saying yes. You don't have to side. You don't have to choose a side between Team Kadiliman and Kasamaan. But I think we know which one is more problematic, isn't it? Or do you think that that would be a problematic discourse in itself? Can't you like put a hierarchy na etong pinakamalaking threat sa progressive movement, etong dynasty na to versus this dynasty, without whitewashing trapoism? Again, am I approaching this too tactically or too graded ba? Parang 50 shades yung approach ko. What is your take on that, Teddy?
Ang difference kasi si Duterte was openly, calling for killings.
Yeah.
Pasista talaga.
Yeah.
Marcos is not like that. But as far as the policies are concerned, as far as what is happening on the ground is concerned, walang malaking significant na pagkakaiba eh.
But the EJK numbers are down, right? I mean, there's still EJK numbers. We had the Human Rights Watch Kaloy on our show.
Yes.
We know that there's
Yes.
still EJKs, unfortunately. But it's not at the same level, right?
No, probably not at the same level. But ang EG case naman eh,
Matagal na yan.
Yeah.
Palparan pa lang. Yeah, I mean,
at saka
yeah.
one death is too many.
Of
you
course,
know.
of course.
Pero yung militarization sa communities, yung red tagging, filing of false charges, the use of the anti-terrorism law against civil society organizations, that continues. Hindi lang ang presidente ang bumabandera, but the NTF-LCAP is down to the grassroots level doing its thing, and tuloy-tuloy ang red tagging dyan. So as far as we are concerned, maaring sa optics magkaiba, but the attacks on the ground are basically the same. And then of course sa ekonomiya, baka mas malala pa itong panahon ni Marcos. Sa dating ng corruption, halos wala namang pinagkaiba rin.
Although to be
So medyo cosmetic ang cosmetic. Of course, the China issue would probably be one of the malinaw na
differences, yeah.
medyo may pagkakaiba.
Yeah.
But all the rest, I don't see anything significantly new or different with how Marcos is running things compared to Duterte. Mas madumi lang ang bibig ang bunganga ni Duterte.
Well, I mean, it is scary when the President of the Republic openly threatens people. I never underestimate that. And the level of brazenness of trolls to death threat you every day. I mean, we know this, Teddy. I mean, I'm not whitewashing what's happening, but now I can at least breathe once in a while, right? Take a walk in ways that I couldn't before. That I had traumas. Whenever a motorbike passes, I had jitters. I mean, to be honest, I don't want to be dramatic over this. Of course, alam ko yung mga kababayan natin na kaibigan, even worse because nare-rape threats sila, kung ano-ano. So, I was never in this business of saying sinong pinakawawa sa atin. I'm just saying, at least I can breathe a little bit in ways we couldn't before. But definitely we're not here in the business of, being sold any cosmetic changes if that were the case. Now,
Ang sa akin lang naman, of course, we are really pushing to hold Duterte, the father and the daughter, accountable for all their crimes. That doesn't mean that we will let Marcos off the hook for his own wrongdoings. And I think it is not necessary for us to declare na, kakampi kami kay Marcos kasi galit kami kay Duterte. That is not I think that is not the proper way to address this issue of whether we should choose sides. Um, so both should be held accountable, but of course, Duterte will be accountable for his extrajudicial killings and itong lumalabas sa Quadcom. Sara will be accountable for her confidential funds, etc. Marcos surely should be accountable for what is happening to the economy, for what they did to the budget. So, kailangan singilin yan eh. I mean, you
Right.
don't have to say, o wag na natin singilin masyado si Marcos kasi ang pangunahing kalaban natin ngayon ay si Duterte. Again, we should remember
but
they are
there could be a way
they are
to,
the same unit team. Nag-away lang sila.
well, they used to be called uni-brats, right? No, but there's a way to work around this, right? Pwede mo sabihin, Teddy, na, kasi I think the debate here is not whether you should criticize both sides. The debate is how to be neutral in the right way, right? So for instance, ang suggestion ko is ganito. Criticize mo yung GAA and then sabihin mo, pero wag natin kalimutan yung mga ginawa ng mga kaibigan natin na DDS, something like that. So you don't give them a chance to come in. I think Chelo, for instance, has been doing that more recently. Kaya attack sila na attack kay Chelo. And to be honest, how I felt, sana ginawa niya na mas maaga na when you go into the corruption issue, always remind, kayo, you have no moral ascendancy to be, essentially to take up the cudgels against corruption. Wala kayong moral ascendancy. So I think that caveat is very important. So ako, yun lang suggestion ko. It's not about neutrality or not. It's about how to be neutral in the right way. And the neutrality that I don't like, of course, Teddy, is yung popcorn ka lang. Because nakasalalay dito yung kinabukasan ng bansa natin. In fact, not only kinabukasan ng bansa natin, what if tomorrow Sara is the president, right? I mean, that's always a possibility, God forbid, right? Even if we disagree with BBM on certain issues, my point is like, you don't want something crazy to happen. Which brings us to the final part of our discussion. So, some would say we are at the crossroads.
Ang importante, you disagree. Ang importante, you disagree with what is wrong. And you say so.
And you're clear with your convictions
And
and
you're
principles.
clear with what you disagree on, where you're coming from, and not, be yung neutral ako kasi I want votes from all sides.
Yun nga, sabi ko, better to lose but with have your dignity intact and build on that for the next election than being pa-cute and all and then lose pa rin and then have nothing to build on for the next cycle, right? Kasi mahabang laban ito, di ba? Although of course everyone wants to win, as Lord Toronaga said, when you win everything is possible. So now let's talk about your Senate race. What are the things that you have learned from the past and what do you think should be done? Kasi ang concern kasi dito is again, me being me, baka hindi ba potentially baka mag-cannibalize kayo mga progressive candidates in a sense that kasi ang sobrang higpit yung labanan eh. Daming mga trapo eh. Daming well-funded, well-oiled. So some would say realistically 1 or 2 or 3 baka yung spot na talagang pwede na for alternative candidates, baka mamaya kayo na lang magkakainan. Hindi ako nagsabi yan, si Ronald Llamas nagsabi. Ako yung nagsabi cannibal, right? Cannibal. Let's just call it the Hannibal effect. How do we avoid that? Na hindi mag-aaway-away yung mga tawagin natin team liwanag for the lack of a better term. And when I say team liwanag, it's not about being yellow, pink, red, whatever. It's just about klaro tayo na ayaw natin ng feudalismo, oligarkiya, at saka maging tuta ng superpowers, right? I think we can agree on those basics, right? So how can people with those baseline agreements make sure na hindi sila mag-away-away, mag-cannibalize, and at the same time, help build or rebuild a kind of again, for the lack of a new pink progressive movement? And maybe this pink I have in mind is more like Latin American pink wave than than just the liberal yellow pink wave. Like di ba yung pink wave in Latin America from Brazil to Chile, ganon. What do you think about that, Teddy?
Well, first of all, people should sit down and talk about it.
Like us, yeah.
But when some don't want to sit down and talk, edi walang mangyayari.
Yeah.
So I think that's the basic. Just sitting down and talking about it would be a first step. Eh yun nga, hindi pa magawa eh.
Bakit kaya, Teddy? Again, you don't have to drop names, of course.
You probably know about that. Some don't want to sit down.
A lot of people don't want to sit down with me. Marami mga iba dyan na ayaw makipag-collaborate sa akin. Para ako naman, as if naman, di ba? No, I understand. But
Mala ko nga, ikaw yung makakapag-bring in ng madaming mga tao kasi kausap mo lahat eh.
Hindi, tao, pero hindi, pero ibang vloggers hate ako, di ba? Bina-blind item pa nga tayo, di ba? Kanina, pag gising ko, nag-text yung kaibigan natin from San Francisco, ay, bina-blind item ka kagabi. So, tinext ko, sabi, ay, pinagsasabi na, hindi, ikaw yun, ano. No, so, I understand. Unfortunately, meron tayong ganyang kultura. I'll tell you something, Teddy. I had a meeting with some of the, let's just call it a pink high-level official from campaign. And we had a long conversation about yung suggestion ko na let's go more Latin America left, right? Pink. And then sabi na Richard, alam mo ang problema, meron tayong isang malaking problema sa ating kultura. Unlike Latin Americans, wala tayong yung Carino Brutal style kung saan pwede tayong mag-disagree. Like tayo, di ba? And grabe yung disagreement natin ng EDCA, kunyari, di ba? Pero tomorrow we can just come and hug and amigo and sabi niya, kaya daw ng mga Latino yan or ibang kultura. Pero sa Pinoy daw, pag nag-disagree ka sa isang donor, isang tita of Manila, yung ganun, wala na, hindi ka nakakausapin yun. Do you think there's some sort of immaturity or overemphasis on the face? I know this is an Asian value thing, whatever, but how can we grow, di ba, if we're not willing to take criticism kung napaka-snowflake natin, di ba? Yun ang inisip ko. Kaya ako, I'm willing to talk to people na ina-attack ako, even some of the trolls ina-attack. Okay lang, debate tayo, discussion tayo. I mean, alam ko, binabayaran ka lang to do that. I won't take it personally, di ba? What about us na hindi naman tayo talagang hostile in a systematic or professional way? Terry, do you think we have a cultural problem? I hate to use that word, pero may cultural problem ba tayo in terms of the willingness to talk even though you know you have disagreements, but you know you have to somehow find a common ground because otherwise kakainin tayo ng buhay ng mga kabila. I'm just being brutally honest, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's cultural kasi in the past nangyayari
okay.
yan eh. In the past nag-usap naman, and Ninoy Aquino was part of a slate na nandun si Alex Bongcayaw.
Right, yeah.
And so during the Marcos dictatorship, in the struggle against the Marcos dictatorship, everyone was on board and talking and doing things. Of course, may mga away-away din, may mga split. So ano lang siguro, people probably don't realize the need for these kinds of coalitions or don't see the necessity. Kasi nga, ang habol lang naman nila manalo sa eleksyon. It's medyo, minsan short-sighted din yung objectives. But hopefully, because of what happened, nakabalik ang Marcos, baka makabalik uli ang Duterte, baka naman matauhan na ang marami sa atin to finally realize that we really have to not only sit down and talk, but we have to work together to ensure that nothing of that sort happens again.
Gusto kong balikan yan. So you said in the past there was more conversation. So do you need people like Ninoy type, yung mga synthesizers, right? Or do you need more like Malasado type of people? Because one of the things that they used to say about Ninoy was, di ba, one morning he can talk to the communists, the next day he can talk to the US ambassador. In fact, allegedly, ang idol daw ni Digong was Ninoy at some point in terms of yung synthesizing. I call it the Juan Peron strategy, right? One day labor union, one day the military. Do you think we lack those kinds of leaders? I don't want to use the word operators because I think that would be unfair. This is a form of leadership. Synthesizer ang tawag ko dyan. Do you think we need more of that kind of synthesizing leadership? Kaysa yung silo-silo tayo. I really hate that. Ayaw ko yung Teddy, yung kanya-kanyang diskarte, tapos lahat feeling nila sila lang pure, sila lang tama. Like, that's so puerile. Sorry, sobrang immature sa akin yan.
I agree. May opportunity yan last 2022, but didn't work out. So there are people who can actually do it and bring everyone to the table if they decide that they will play that role. In the past, ang gumagawa niya, at least sa history ng alam ko, sila Tanyada could do that. The old man Tanyada, I think sila Chino Roses, No, yung mga yan, sila joke, no, brought together yung grupo
Yeah,
nila Cory
synthesizers,
with the
yeah.
left and then with the old liberals. Siguro yung may ganyang stature who
Yeah,
uh, who have the goodwill of everyone
yeah.
and may credibility and bring everyone together at the table.
And the sense of urgency, kasi meron kang martial law dati, you have a common enemy na very clear, di ba?
Oh yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that sense of
Ganun pa.
urgency is lacking among some of our friends. I mean, again, I know maraming magbabash sa akin for this, but one of the disappointments I had after the 2022 election is, wait, nasan na yung pink movement, right? Na-organize ba sila? I mean, di ba? Million-million ang
Yeah, yeah,
lumabas, di
right.
ba? Nakuha
That's
ba
it.
yung you cannot just have it cyclical. You have to build on kilusan, 'di ba? Hindi siya upuan tapos balikan mo ulit. Kilusan 'yan eh. So to be honest, again, is it a political culture problem? Okay, ganito na lang siguro, Teddy. Again, I don't want to be anyways, I'm gonna be bashed anyway. So what I'm gonna say is this. Siguro meron tayong subculture na problematic. Ngayon, na pwede natin ayusin. I'll just call it the subculture na lang. Na pwede natin ayusin. No, but the reason why I like talking to you and Franz Castro is because, it's not like I don't want to talk to the rest. I mean, si Sir Neri, among others, of course, I want to talk to Attorney Neri Comenes also. It's just that, even if we disagree on certain issues, so sometimes quite passionately, no, on this how to play US, China. I mean, you see, even Ian Walden, na sensei ko, we disagree on foreign policy and some of the other issues. We're still willing to sit down and discuss kasi alam naman natin ng kailangan ng bansa natin eh. We're sick and tired of an oligarchy which takes some 76% of newly created growth. We're sick and tired of a system where 85% of the elected offices goes to the dynasties. We're sick and tired of my new term na ako eh, budol duts. Budots na budol. Diba? Yung sinasabay yung pa-cute, entertainment, budol, walang substance, vacuous. It's a joke. It's a joke. I remember a Russian diplomat telling me 10 years ago before they invaded Ukraine after something, Richard, I don't understand your democracy. I go to our barangay, everyone the same name, Reyes, Reyes, Reyes. Of course, this ibang name. The only one not the same name is the son-in-law. How can you call this a democracy, comrade? Like, I said, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So I was talking to my Latino friends, Espanol friends. They said, alam mo pare, even sa amin, hindi ganun. Talagang and so a Spanish scholar said it's a principales culture, right? Na talagang itong grip ng dynasties. This is a mockery of whatever claim to democracy we have. So we are also sick and tired of, I think we share that. I think that 40% I mentioned in the Octa survey are sick and tired of this system and we have to activate it. So moving forward, Teddy, ano yung mga gusto mong sana mangyari? Anong sa tingin mo dapat mangyari? And then realistically, what are the things you're aiming for? Because ako, parating ko sinasabi, 2025 is important, 2028 is importantest, right? Because I think there's a very good
That's true.
chance that the 2028 race could be very open. We don't know if Sara will run, baka Tulfo will run, baka Martin will run. Magulo yan. I think you could have a 1992 race situation whereby it's a six-way split. And someone with only 20% could become president. So, I'm not ruling out that possibility. So, actually, medyo optimistic ako. And I'll add something else. I know among left, may disagreements and all. Ako, para sa akin the fact that we have a progressive, I would even say, socialist senator, the first one since Isabela de las Reyes in the Senate, Philippines, I'm talking about Riza Ontiveros, for me says that maybe something is moving in the right direction. I mean, we can debate whether Riza is really socialist, but she basically is at least a social democrat to me, right? She's far to the left of practically everyone else, right? Yung iba fake minority, yung iba like. So, for me, mukhang may improvement naman eh. I think Riza has shown na kaya naman to make left in whatever shade palatable to a certain degree. Are there lessons we should learn from Riza's case? Because she won in two very tough races, 2016 and 2022. Those were hell races for opposition, right? And yet she won. Maybe there are things we can learn from Riza's case, right?
Yes, I'm sure there are many things that we can learn from her case. And I think she will play a big role in 2028 in uniting the
Yes,
progressives and the liberals. Unang-una, pinasa na sa kanya yung mantel ni Lenny. So if Lenny
Now,
really
now.
abdicates of the
Ayan na
role,
naman ako. Ayan na naman ako. Well, yeah,
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 I
yeah, yeah,
mean
yeah, yeah.
that was the pronouncement from Lenny that she has passed the baton to Risa. So it's Risa's role to play, and I hope that she really plays that role. Mukhang 2028, 2025 nag-eksperimento lahat eh. Kami sa Makabayan, we're experimenting with,
Yeah.
having an 11-person slate for the senatorial elections. That's a first for us. Eksperimento ito. I think si Kiko also, and Bam is experimenting with his own political party. Nagsama sila. So, I think everything is in preparation for 2028.
Yeah.
But I hope leaders like Risa, like Kiko,
Bring together, yeah.
hopefully still si Lenny, sila Bam, will continue to play a role a more important role in 2028 in unifying everyone. Just as kami, tingin namin, may ganung role din kami. Everyone will have that role. Obligado tayong to play that role in 2028. Otherwise, it will most likely be another Duterte presidency or a Tulfo presidency or
Basically,
a
more of the
Romualdez
same, right? More of the same,
presidency.
yeah. Yeah.
Yun na nga. So, unless we really get our act together, it will be more of the same.
More of the
Probably
same, or
even worse.
worse of the same, or worse of the same.
Yun na nga. And you probably will have a role to play kung nanggugulo, di ba?
Well, as long as they allow me, I can moderate that. I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing, Teddy, no? Actually, nung binisita ko si Ma'am Lenny nung nasa detention pa siya, sabi ko, alam mong sanang nangyari dito is yung magsama-sama kayo at least yung mga women leaders, di ba?
Lenny or
I'm sorry, Lenny, sorry, Delima, Ma'am Delima, sorry.
Laila, yeah.
Laila
Si
de Los.
Laila.
Gabi na, sorry, gabi na. It's 10:20.
Right.
Laila, and she said, yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I still have that hope na yung mga leaders of opposition can come together. We have this all around the world, di ba? Yung, kumbaga, we had it at Hungary, semi-successful. We had it in Czech Republic, very successful. Nagsama-sama, nag-coalition. In Turkey, almost successful. Nagsama yung grand opposition, the Kurdish, the CHP. They almost defeated Erdogan, and they defeated him in the parliamentary elections. In India, Rahul Gandhi, the Congress Party came out stronger, came out better. So, ganun kasang view ko, Teddy. Every time I feel depressed, I look around the world and I see, hindi naman tayo nag-iisa, may mga mas malala pang mga sitwasyon. Pero may nangyari pa rin eh. And that always gives me this energy at kapal na mukha, no, to come say, hey, we have to talk, we have to do this. So talaga nagpapasalamat.
Actually, 3 taon na nating pinag-uusapan yan eh.
Well, because, Teddy, 2028, you have to start 3 years ago. It's a 5-6 years run. You don't want to start 2020. So actually, sa tingin ko, in 2025, we're way, parang kahit papano, we have come a long way, di ba? Since 2022, I would say. Hindi tayo
Yung
nag-uusap
isang
nun.
bayan was a good initiative.
Yeah. Get the ball rolling, yeah.
Kaya lang, they failed to unite the opposition in 2022. And for 2025, I think hindi rin mas lalong hindi nila na-sustain yung nasimulan nila ng 2022 for 2025. But these efforts to unite are there, and hopefully the players will continue to strive to do that.
And last point, Teddy, first of all, ano yung nagbibigay ng lakas sa'yo para tuloy-tuloy yung adikayin mo, itong ilaban mo? Because I know it can be quite lonely, right? It can be very lonely to be progressive in the Philippines. You get attacked by fellow progressives, you get questioned. There was this guy named Teddy Casino asking me, left ka ba talaga? I'm just kidding. No, I mean, to be honest, di ba? Like, mahirap talaga maging anti-system. Or, di naman anti-system, I mean, like, systemic transformation person. Kasi ang dami mong babanggain. Tapos ang dami pang nagmamagaling, di ba? What gives you the strength, inspiration to keep on going, Teddy? And how can people help you in terms of, is there a website? Is there, if people want to volunteer, how can they reach out to you? Because I see effort by you and France, among others, in fairness, diba? To broaden the coalition beyond your traditional base.
Ako, ano lang talaga eh, hindi ko matanggap na wala akong gagawin to change
Mm.
this country. Ah, feeling ko hindi ako makakatulog ng maayos pag sinabi kong out na ako dyan. This sense of I have to do something has always been there. Like itong election halimbawang ito, no? Marami nagsasabi kasi ang problema natin bobotante yung mga kababayan natin. Ah, talagang pinipili lang nila yung political dynasties. And iniisip ko, for many of our people, they don't actually have a choice. Kasi ang pagpipilian mo lang naman sa election talagang mga dynasty. Ako na lang dito in a place where I live, ang naglalaban dito magbayaw for the mayorship. So
Yeah.
whether I vote for one or the other, it's the same. At it's not because bobo ako, na bobotante ako. Kaya lang, yun lang naman ang choice na binibigay sa akin. So feeling ko, this elections, ang gagawin kong papel, di bigyan ko ng choice yung tao. Kung talagang naghahanap sila ng iba naman, then at least I will be there. Baka naman maisip nila, ito iba naman. Hindi political dynasty ito, hindi ito bilyonaryo, wala itong real estate company, matagal na nakibaka ito, baka naman, And I feel it is my role to give that choice to our people. Kasi nga, kung the usual na sabihin ko, hindi, bayaan mo na lang yung mga politiko dyan, sila naman ang magagaling dyan, hindi wala talagang mangyayari.
Well, unfortunately,
I feel I have to do something.
I completely understand. Unfortunately, even if you do the right thing, mahirap matulog kasi ang dami kailangan gawin. So thank you so much, former Congressman Teddy Cassini, for sharing your time. Letter C ka, so ano yung number mo sa Senado on the ballot for those who want to vote
16.
for 16, Teddy Cassini.
16,
Number 16,
letter C.
madali lang, madali lang memorize yan, i-memorize yan. Hindi kailangan mo. Kasi 61 ba? 61 or 66 candidates?
16. Letter C.
No. Total candidates, 61 or 66?
66.
Diba?
I think
Ang dami,
66.
diba?
Or hindi, may umalis na eh. Nabawasan
oo nga
na.
pala.
Kasi may nag-drop out na.
May
I
drop
think the
out na,
number
pero andun pa rin yung billboard. Tapos, sabi ni Digong,
Oo
di ba,
nga
patayin natin yung 15 dyan para makaluwang. So, you never know, baka abutan tayo sa top 10 yan.
Oo nga,
The ratings are
baka
going.
kumonti pa, baka may mamatay dyan.
Oh my God, God forbid. But speaking of cannibalism, di ba, you never know. But on a serious note, maraming salamat, Teddy, for sharing your time. As I said, it's always good to have people who are willing to take the risk to push the envelope. And as I promised to our audience here, we want to make sure that the candidates we have here are people who have their heart in the right place. And ginagawa natin yan hindi para sa Tony Talks. Ginagawa natin, no offense kay Tony, but we're doing this because gusto natin magkaroon ng, mamulat ang tao pagdating sa mga different issues. And I really appreciate yung sinabi mo na sana hindi tayo maging elitist. Stop blaming the voters. Because if voters have no choice, they cannot deliver what you want. If voters are being intimidated, if there's warlordism, right? So dapat talaga tingnan natin ugat ng and we have to give them options. Kaya later this week, we're gonna also have other progressive candidates, including si Ma'am Heidi Mendoza also on this show. So we're hoping to get as many as progressive candidates here on this show. Don't worry guys, we'll also have the trapos. para lang balance. I mean, speaking of no choice. But as much as possible, I want to have the non-trapo candidates on our little show here. And looking forward, Sir Teddy, to catching up in person. Hopefully, next conversation. Tuloy natin Volume 4 of, Volume 3 na ba? Volume 3 of Marxism and Marcos. Mag-away-away na tayo dyan. Thank you so much, sir.
Sige, sama ko dyan, sama ko.
Yes.
Alright.
Magdala ka ng armor, ha?
Thanks, Richard.
Just kidding. Thank you, pare. Have a good day. God bless.
Alright, good evening.
Good evening po. Alright guys, thank you so much. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga nakinig sa atin. Alam ko guys. It's that 40% guys. It's that 40% sabi ko. Ang dami sa ating mga kababayan ay nawala ng talaga ng tiwala sa ating sistema. At saka lang, whether suka, sino ka, kinain yung sino ka, lahat all of these kadiring metaphors na ginagamit na ngayon. People are looking for alternatives. So please, the least we can do is to listen to the other candidates and not be dismissive. Oh, ito wala yan. Ito ano lang yan. Ito. Let's just listen to them. So we're hoping to have more of non-trapo candidates on our little show. Yeah, we'll have the more traditional ones also here and there. But So we wanna, hopefully we will also have Ma'am Heidi Mendoza also on this show, among others. So gusto natin pakinggan, no? An alternative vision for the Philippines. Dahil sa aking palagay, kayang-kaya naman talaga natin yan eh. We just have to give chance to people who are taking the chance. I like that. Let's just give chance to people who are taking the chance. Even if they may not make it in this race, dahil grabe talagang, talagang ipit na ipit yung race ngayon, you never know. This could be actually the seeds of something really special for 2028 and beyond. Kaya maraming salamat sa lahat ng mga sumuporta sa atin. Napansin ko dito on YouTube, a couple of friends have already have that logo of uh, of membership. So nag-member na po kayo. So please make sure pwede na kayo mag-member. So it's your way of, little way of also supporting itong maliit na ginagawa natin. So may option to be member dito sa YouTube channel natin. Also option for subscription dito naman sa Richard Foronda. Hey Darren, after all, hindi naman libre maglagay ng oras to these things because that means time away from doing other things, right? But since we don't want to do Tony Talks, we have to be self-sustaining. And it's your support, your stickers, your stars, and more important, you guys sharing itong mga maliliit na discussion natin that goes a long way. So we're gonna have also Professor Ranjit Wright later this week also to discuss latest surveys showing yung shrinking support base ng DDS and still a huge number of Filipinos who are non-aligned and independent or have switched off. Kausapin din natin si Senator Trillanes again. Ayan, Barduguls na naman tayo. Heidi Mendoza, and then of course, hopefully in person na naman with RRM, right? So thank you very much. And then by the way, abangan nyo guys, bago na yung latest season na ng ating The View from Manila is out, season 6-5 na ba? Where I did an analysis of different schools of thought within the Trump administration and different schools of thought about Trump and what he means for the 21st century. The Jacksonian school, the McKinley legacy. We talk about the restrainers versus the prioritizers, lahat yan nandyan yung mga analysis natin. You can watch actually for free The View from Manila dyan sa YouTube. But if you want to have it live, right away kaagad, not live, but right away kaagad, of course, you can go to Signal TV, One News TV 5. You can also check it out there. Also, please don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Deep Dive with Richard Hidarian. Medyo umakyat-akyat na lang ulit ng konti yung ating analytics, but we're way below where we were last year. So we really have to sustain yung momentum natin from last year because we want to maintain the position not only as number one political podcast in the Philippines, that's not a big issue. We need to be top 10 of all podcasts in the Philippines consistently. So ang kalaban po natin yung mga Tony Talks type na mga shows na puro, I mean, I have nothing against entertainment. I have nothing against, okay lang yan. Pero sana naman guys, ating mga kababayan, makinig din naman sila sa mga diskusyon na kahit papaano ay, di ba? Medyo angat naman yung ating pag-intindi sa mga komplikadong issue na actually hindi ganun ka-komplikado kung binigyan mo ng sapat na pansin, di ba? Kahit medyo konyotik yung Tagalog, at least kahit papaano, di ba, ma-entertain naman kayo. So your support is very, very important for us to show, guys, to show now you can make a political podcast, a theoretical discussion podcast, and Gramsci War of Maneuver podcast, a top 10 podcast in the Philippines against the grain of all of this mediocrity, all of these Tony Talks, all of this fourth world entertainment obsessed nonsense that we have there. Right? Mahal na mahal ko ang Pilipinas, but believe me, I'm sure Rizal would have wept if he realized he wrote for a country that barely reads him. Right? Nevertheless, at least some people are playing his game sa civilization right now. So, yung suporta niya po sa atin dito ay napakamahalaga sa atin, emotionally more than anything else. And kanina kung yung mga ibang tao nakita nila may mga pinost tayo, we want to have more conversations. So tomorrow, I'll have a couple of interviews for my show, but I'm also going to do a taping from my dark mode studio. A little bit I'll discuss about advice on career, right? Because as I always say, the number one advice I have when it comes to career, guys, especially for younger generation, is do not waste your time winning over people who do not see what you bring to the table, right? Do not waste your time on those who refuse or are blind to see your gift or beauty. In fact, applicable din yan sa love life, right? Do not waste your time. I'm very glad that over time, papalit ako ng trabaho. Not because I have anything wrong with the employers and all. I'm very grateful for all of my employers. But I always felt you have to keep on growing and you have to keep on finding the right place where you can grow and you can thrive. Because the last thing you want is to be stuck in a place with a bunch of people who don't see you for what you can bring to the table. That's the worst thing you can do. You know, breaking your heart, wasting your time, trying to win over people who refuse to see what you bring to the table, who refuse to see your talent. Waste of time. And time is more important than anything else. Especially youth is more important. So while you're young, you got the energy, guys. The number one thing I want you guys to focus on is maghanap kayo ng mga environments where you can grow and you can thrive. I'm not into like be yourself, blah. No, you need discipline, obviously. You need to learn the basics. You need to learn the not only the tricks of the trade, you have to learn the trade. Alright? Walang shortcut Andrew Tate nonsense dito. But do not also waste your time in a place or on people or an award or whatever. Kung sa tingin mo bulag talaga tong mga tao na to sa kakayahan mo and what you bring to the table, that's the last thing you want to do because that's a disservice to yourself, to your time. And imagine if imagine yung time na sana nilagay mo and you became someone great, and imagine all of the people who could have benefited from your greatness. Tapos sinayang mo lang dahil you wanted to win over some people na wala namang kakwenta-kwenta or fourth world mindset or mediocrity or anything like that. Alright? So ako, I have had many setbacks in my life, but the reason why, aside from faith in the Lord and support of my family, is this realization. Whenever you face a setback, think about it and make sure next time hindi mo ulitin yan. You learn the next lesson, you move forward, you go stronger, you go better. Alright? You go stronger and analyze saan ka nakamali. And if you think your mistake was you wasted your time on the wrong people and the wrong environment, never make that mistake again. Next time, if you see anything, anyone, any initiative, any award, whatever, that you feel, sayang lang ako ng oras and keep away from that. Put your energy somewhere where you can get the most bang out of your buck, out of your energy and out of your time, right? So we're gonna have some conversation also about that. Kasi sa tingin ko, you know, this like what we're doing here, hindi lang naman yung usap-usap lang eh. You need a degree of courage, you need a degree of conviction and tenacity para magawa mo ito. We're episode what? 824 or something like that. And thank God malapit na tayo maging episode 1000. And we wouldn't have been able to have 1000 vlogs, right? We actually have more than 2000 videos already on YouTube among other things. If wala tayong dedication, wala tayong discipline. So no, there's no shortcuts here. But more importantly, don't waste your time on people or places that refuse to see you for what you bring to the table. Yun lang. Maraming salamat. God bless and talk to you soon.